Welcome back. Here we are again. Today's block is going to be about leadership and group work. And I'm going to ask a question to start us off so that it gives you a chance to think and hopefully direct some of your thinking as then we go on to some of the concepts. And my question for you is, what makes a good leader? I'd like you to actually think about that. Maybe pause the video or look to a friend and talk about it for a minute. What makes a good leader? And then I'll come back and we'll talk. Okay, so what sort of qualities make a good leader? I would say the first one is a leader should have vision, right? And what does that mean? Vision. Well, a vision should be something that's achievable and not really just not a dream. So something that we could actually do, but maybe that's a challenge, right? So challenging but achievable. Something that we can actually attain. That's definitely one thing. And why does a leader need a vision? Well, it gives a purpose, right? A vision should be a purpose. It should be something that can be used to motivate other people, to inspire them and influence them. Vision should be something that gets people moving, right? And it's a target. A target. This is what we want to achieve. This is my particular vision. It's important. Keeps people moving forward and in the right direction. So that's the first thing we think that a leader needs. This probably really should be first, right? A leader has got to have integrity. It's perhaps the biggest skill, if you will, with a leader. It's the foundation for success. It's essential. You have to have integrity. And some of the things we'll talk about in this leadership block are skills, some are values. This is essentially a value of a person. It's not necessarily a skill. Sort of in my way of thinking, integrity is something that we don't train you to have integrity. You simply have it. It's fundamental to who you are. It's the idea that you're going to do the right things. You're not going to cut corners. It's the idea that you're accountable. And what do I mean by accountable? When things go wrong, you are going to take responsibility when it's something that you should take responsibility for, right? When things go right, it's okay to be, oh, it was me. But when things go wrong, too, you have to be willing to take accountability for that. And when you do take accountability, you have to be willing to apologize. That's a part of integrity. Someone with integrity is someone who would stand up for you. A leader would do that. Honesty. It's another big piece of integrity. Again, you're doing the right things. You're not cutting corners, even when folks aren't watching. I know that this is a skill that basically parents are trying to teach their children from the time they're this tall, until the time they're as tall as me and taller, right? In terms of doing the right thing. So integrity, it's a big one. The next one I want to talk about is consistency. If you think about leaders, if I tell you today we're going to march north and tomorrow we're going to march west and the next day we're going to march south, you have no idea when you get up in the morning where we're going. And that's not something we're really looking for from a leader. Not only the particular direction we're going to move or the things we want to achieve should be somewhat consistent, but even the mood and your attitude. Someone who's really cranky day one and really joyful and cheerful day two, it's probably not someone you want to follow because you don't know where they're going. Again, this is the sort of thing that provides organization as well. Again, if I am working for someone or inspired by someone who's consistent and moving me in a particular direction, it's a lot easier than somebody who is all over the place. So consistency is a big deal. And as part of that, when we set expectations as leaders, they shouldn't differ that much from day to day. Today, I shouldn't think to myself, well, on this assignment, they can probably get this assignment done in an hour. And tomorrow, same assignment, well, they ought to be able to get that done in 6 or 7 minutes. That doesn't make sense. We want to be consistent, right? A good leader should be empathetic, should have empathy. This is a skill that you can develop. The idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and really thinking about what the impact of a decision that you make is on them. One of the big ways to be empathetic is to be a good listener. Listen to someone and learn what their inner world looks like. So I think that's a big deal. By listening to and trying to have empathy, again, putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, we can have compassion. That's an important skill for a leader. So, and along with that, if we are empathetic and we have integrity, we can not do a couple of other things that we think good leaders really shouldn't do, and that's things like blaming other people, avoiding situations, whining about them. Even sarcasm can often not work well from a leadership role. So, blaming other folks as a leader doesn't go over well. Sometimes even when it's simply factual, I messed up and I work for you, you still might not want to blame me for that, because it's sort of counterproductive. Certainly leaders who whine or simply avoid problems are not really leading particularly well. And sarcasm, it probably has its place in very small doses, but it's really easy to demotivate people using that technique. So just a few qualities of a leader. Now we're going to move on to how we might motivate people. Okay, so again, we want to talk about motivation, and I think it's nice to provide a definition of what we're talking about when we're talking about motivation first. And essentially, so it's the sum of all internal and external things and external forces. And it's funny because this is an engineering class and I talk about forces, and here probably it may not be physical forces. It may be emotional and political and social kind of forces. That essentially we say we'll do three things. Energize behavior, right? And provide direction for behavior. And thirdly, that contribute to the persistence of behavior. I think I just spelled persistence wrong. So all three things. We'll clean that up in post. We won't really, but I think I spelled persistence wrong. So motivation is essentially the wanting to part of human behavior. And again, if we look at those three components, when we talk about energy, that word actually comes from the Latin word for move, right? So it's basically the way to get us moving, right? So we energize behavior. In terms of direction, I think it's pretty straightforward. If we're motivated to get something done, we're motivated to go work out, we're motivated to get our homework, that's the direction we're going to move. And I think persistence, is another word that's really important when we talk about motivation. I know many of us have started on a diet or a workout plan, or I'm going to get all my homework done this term, and I'm going to get it done early, and then it doesn't last, right? We do it for the first couple days, and then it gradually that new behavior that we're trying to accomplish fades. So persistence of behavior is another big deal. And so if this is how we define motivation, how do we link motivation to performance, to getting stuff done, to changing our life, to getting a project done, to getting our homework done, to getting our engineering degree? How do we link motivation to performance? And the way I'm going to do it in this class is to talk about goals, right? And goal setting, and how we pick a goal, and what a good goal is, and the whole idea of setting goals. So what is a goal? If we were to define a goal, it's basically a desired end state, right? So that's the definition of a goal. We want to accomplish something, right? We want to get from here to here, right? Some sort of desired end state. With that in mind, one of the most interesting things I learned as I was preparing for this lesson for you is that it turns out that goals that are hard to achieve actually are more correlated to performance than goals that are easy. So it turns out that goals that are more challenging are more likely to change behavior and improve performance. And I was somewhat surprised by that. I sort of felt like, easy goals will make it easy to get there. Turns out making one that's challenging can actually change behavior even more so. So if that's what a goal is, let's talk about then the conditions for goal setting. As we're thinking about how to set goals, I would say that there's a few things that setting goals and that whole environment need to have. Certainly, clarity is one. If we're going to set a goal, it needs to be clear, right? It needs to be clear and specific, right? So, for example, if we were trying to get our homework assignment done, a goal might not be, well, I want to study more. I want to study more. That's my goal. Well, that's not very specific. It's somewhat clear, but it's not very specific. How about I want to study 20 minutes more per day? That's very specific. Or Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to spend an extra half an hour on this particular class. That's clear, that's specific, and that's what we need for goals. So the next thing about goals is there should definitely be a challenge there, right? I know for one, I'll tell you, I weigh 190 pounds. A year ago, I weighed 185 pounds. What should my goal be? I think it's going to be a challenge for me, but I need to get back to 185. And in fact, a more challenging goal might be I would like to get down to 180. So that's, setting a goal for me, well, I want to get down to 189. That's not really much of a challenge. And I know for some of you, 5 pounds is not a challenge, but well, for me, maybe it is. I really like to eat. So challenge is a big one. There should be some idea of commitment. I'm going to make a goal. I have to stick to it. And not only my own personal goals, but as a leader, we have to have buy-in from our employees, from our followers, that's a good goal. Because if we're setting goals and they're always completely unrelated to what our followers and our group members want to achieve, how motivated are they going to be to actually try to achieve them? Another thing in goal setting is there should be some sort of feedback. You can give feedback by clarifying expectations, right? Right. And one thing, looking at metrics. And when we talk about looking at metrics, one thing I want to say here is that a goal should be clear, it should be challenging, there should be some commitment from everybody involved, feedback, but a goal should also be measurable, right? Getting back to my example about I want to study more. How's that measurable? I want to study an extra 20 minutes per day. That's very measurable. I can determine if I made it or not. Sometimes folks set such amorphous goals. I want to be a better person. Well, what does that mean? I think sometimes in life we do need to be better people. I absolutely agree. But when we're talking about goals and performance in a professional type environment, they should be measurable. And finally, we want to at least address the complexity of those issues in terms of setting goals. If we have a goal and it's complex, it doesn't mean it can't still be clear and challenging and measurable. But if it's complex, then we need to work through some things like how long will it take? A lot of this is expectations. What's the path? And, the how, the why, etc. So if a goal is complex, we as leaders need the whole team involved with how to answer those sorts of questions. Sometimes if you set a goal as a leader and it's not clear, basically it comes back to this, but this is basically a subset of clarity. If it's not clear and everybody's not on the same page, we're probably not going to get very far. So what I want to talk about next is the SMART goal system. So those are some attributes. I'll try and leave you with this acronym, and hopefully there'll still be enough room for me to stand. I think there will be. So the SMART goal system. Is your goal specific? some of you smart people out there are looking at that I'm going to be asking questions with that acronym. Is it measurable? Right? And then what are the action plans, right? That you're going to use to achieve it. That gets into some of these complexity issues. We want to talk about what the action plan must be to answer those kind of questions. Next question, is it realistic? So we want it to be challenging, right? But not impossible. If it's impossible, that's going to be demotivating, not motivating. We need it to be realistic, or is it just simply too far-fetched? And finally, what's the deadline, right? What is the deadline? How long will it take? In other words, what's the timeline? So those are some questions in terms of one way of looking at goals, this SMART system, the idea of it specific, measurable, is there a reasonable action plan, is it realistic, and what's the timeline? Those are the kind of questions we should be asking as we set goals for other people and ourselves. So we've talked a little bit about leadership qualities, we've talked a little bit about goal setting in groups. The last part of this overall block, and I anticipate this block may be somewhat shorter coming from me perspective in terms of the video, is to talk about group work. And what I want to do is, I've been working with engineering groups for over 10 years now, and I've seen some things. And I want to just share some insights that I've had through those years, some things I've learned that maybe you can learn the easy way instead of the hard way, and give you some sort of tips on how to work in an engineering group. I'm just going to, just a bulleted list of the things I see in groups that can really help make a group even turn from maybe not the best experience to a much better experience. And I will relay one quick little story. When I was in engineering school, I still remember steel design class. I was in a group of 4, and I wasn't even the best student. So I'm opening up a little to you now. I was an okay student, not a fantastic student. The engineering fire really blazed up in me in graduate school. In undergrad, I enjoyed it, but I had a lot of other things going on too. Long story short, in that group, not even a great student, 4 people, we turned in a 100-page report, and 90 of those pages I had to be personally responsible for, because some of the other folks in the group just didn't cut the mustard. And I learned a little then, but I've learned a lot more, and that experience for me wouldn't have been quite so painful. So I know some of you don't really love group work, because it tends to be painful. So I'm going to try to give you a few things to make it not painful. In fact, the world is a group environment. And so when we give group assignments in engineering school, there's a reason for that, because that's what the world is. So let me try and give you a few tips. The first thing, put it in writing. If you come to decisions in a group about who's going to do what or which direction we're going to move, put it in writing. When you put things in writing, at the end of the day, it does 2 things. Number one, we as a group can all look back and say, okay, we agreed to do it that way. If it doesn't happen, then I have a record of, hey, this is what we agreed to, and it's a lot easier to figure out sort of the post-mortem, what went wrong. And also by putting it in writing, it's real clear to everybody in the group, even while they're doing the work. So put it in writing. It's a big deal. You have a group meeting, you decide, all right, we broke the assignment down into 4 parts. I'm going to work on this part. You 3 are going to work on those 3 parts. Put it in writing. It's important. It's a big deal. Groups often start really well and then drift into strange places. By putting in writing, it will solve some of that drift issue. Another thing we found that works well is the idea of billable hours. We're going to attach a sheet to the online course content here that we use at UT Tyler, billable hours in the senior design experience in civil engineering. And basically, we're trying to model the way real engineering firms work. When you work in an engineering firm, you don't just kind of work your way through the day. You have a project that you're billing your hours to because you have a client, and that client is going to pay for the things that are on the billable hours sheet. In other words, if you're frittering your time away and not actually working on a project, then your company is eating your time in terms of the money that they're paying out for your time. They have nowhere to bill it to. They have no client to bill it to. So they probably have one last code, which is sort of, overhead billable hour code. And that's where your time, if you're frittering it away, goes. And at some point, your company's not going to be pleased. And you probably will be out of a job if you're not billable hour onto a real project. So if you track in a group project your billable hours, that's a big deal. Track, okay, we said we were going to do 4 parts. I worked for 2 hours. It's on part A. Track it. Use that sheet. It can help. Same sort of thing. A sign-up sheet. Put it in writing, billable hours, sign-up sheet. These are all ways to put it in writing, really. When we talk about a sign-up sheet, what we typically do is, especially early in a group project, the roles are not really well defined and how we're going to get something done. A sign-up sheet where you actually literally pass it around and folks sign up for the stuff that they want to do. Again, in terms of setting goals, you have buy-in if I signed up for it. That means I must have cared about that part. So a sign-up sheet could work. When I use this phrase, getting buy-in just now, I'll put it on the board. It's a big deal. One of the big things I find in a group project when they don't go well is that we get a leader who's very autocratic, meaning they just tell people this is how it's going to be. Well, if I don't care about how it's going to be the way your vision is, then I haven't bought in. And if I haven't bought in, the chances of me being motivated to do what you say I should do in my group project is they're not great. So getting buy-in is a big deal. It's worth spending time early in a group project that everybody has a sense that, the parts of the project that I'm working on, I believe in them. And the direction that the overall group is going, I believe in that. And you probably need to spend a little extra time early on sitting around brainstorming and achieving some sort of common vision that everybody can actually believe in and buy in. It'll help the motivation and the performance down the line. The other thing that we use at UT Tyler and that we'll attach to the website of this course is a good group member survey. It's about 20 questions long, and after every big milestone in our group projects, we ask everyone in the group to fill this out. And some of the questions on there, and I'll let you look at it, are things like, this group member showed up on time to all meetings, yes or no, or on a 5-point scale. This group member was prepared when they showed up to meetings. If work was assigned to that group member, when they showed up, that work was done. That sort of question. Another question is, if there are mistakes, this group member is committed to getting it right and will stay until the mistakes are fixed. Sometimes, group project, we say, all right, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. We show up and we didn't really understand the vision. Maybe our clarity wasn't the best. And so I've made a mistake. I'm going in the wrong direction. At that point, I have 2 choices as a group member. I can throw it down and say, well, I did my work. You guys figure out how to use it. Or, yes, I understand. I got to do the rework. And I'll stick around and make sure it gets done. So that survey, look at those questions. Those are the sorts of things that we think make a good group member. So a couple more of these. Almost done. I want to talk about meeting times. This has happened a lot to me over the last 10 years. I'll have a group that isn't doing particularly well on a project, and it's a group of 4 people, and 1 or 2 of them say, well, they always have group meetings without me. And the other members in the group say, that person never shows up. Well, which one's right? It might be both. It might be that if 3 of the 4 of you are saying, well, I can meet Tuesday at 5, and the fourth one says, I can't meet Tuesday at 5, and 3 of the 4 say, well, majority rules, we're meeting Tuesday at 5, don't be surprised when the fourth person doesn't show, right? We have to pick meeting times that everyone can make, and we have to, again, use our empathy, right, our empathetic skills when we think about meeting times. Meeting times tend to be a big deal for groups in engineering. I see it all the time, where I have somebody who's a soccer player, and well, we practice from 4 to 6 every day, or a single mother who I have to go pick up my kid at 5 o'clock, or somebody who has a job because that's how they're paying for college. Well, I work from 9 to 11 on Mondays and Wednesdays. You just can't have group times that time. You got to pick times that work for everybody. It's a big deal. A couple last little things here. I have found that this works quite well. You have a group assignment, and it's 10 pages long. In engineering, typically engineering calculations look like this. We have an engineer, and we have a checker. Normally, engineering calculations do not go out without 2 people looking at them. And so if I did the work, I'll sign it, MJM, or initial it. And then if you checked it, John Smith will sign off that they check it. And if you'll sign every page in a turned-in assignment in the top right corner or something like that with who did it, who checked it, that does a few things. First of all, you're modeling professional behavior. And second of all, it tells the instructor, okay, this is approximately who did the work. Third thing it does is, this is random, but if there's a lawsuit about your engineering calculations, you know who they go after of those 2 people? Well, it's the engineer, right? Hey, it might be the checker, and probably in a lot of cases, the checker's the one who's checking off, yes, I checked this work, it's right. So anyway, that's one of those things too, in terms of who got it, where the mistakes lie. But also, this can motivate your group. If I turn in a 30-page document and there's 3 of us, and I've only initialed 5 pages, have I really probably pulled my weight? It might be so. It might be that my 5 pages took 3 times as long as your 15 pages. And there we are. The math works. But it might be that I'm not pulling my weight. I think a lot of people, if they know they're not pulling their weight, they may change behavior. But if they don't know, or they can kind of fool themselves, then their behavior may stay the same. Initialing pages is a big deal. And these are some things, if you set them up as your group is starting, then even if your group goes fantastically well, they're not going to hurt you. But if your group tends to drift, they can pull you back. Sometimes it's more difficult to establish them later in a group, in a group's life cycle, if you will. So set them up early. You can set them up midway through a group project, but sometimes setting them up early works real well. I have 2 others here on this. I want to talk about Dropbox or services like Dropbox. I know Dropbox is one. I think Box is another one. The idea of file sharing on the cloud. And okay, so I'm an old man, and young folks are watching this, and you know more about technology than I do. I do want to suggest that having a place where you can share your documents. When you first start a big group project, set one up. Have one of you set one up, invite everybody, and then there's a place where you can transfer files back and forth. It's really helpful. It definitely works well. And the last one, and perhaps the most important one in group work that I can talk to you about, is the idea of communication. It's really the key. Over 10 years of doing this with engineering groups, I always poll groups after the fact, get feedback about how it went. The biggest thing that comes through is communication. If the communication in your group is good, probably the attitudes and performance of your group will be good. If the communication is poor, probably the attitudes and performance of your group will be poor. And when I say, what is good communication? We're staying positive, we're staying on task. We know how to have some fun. We're not blaming, whining, all those things we talked about before. But we are talking. We're not meeting and not telling folks, for example, in the group that we met. We're not making big decisions without getting input from everybody. Communication is a big deal, and a subset of this is, I want to talk briefly about texting and emailing. again, I'm old, so this is more email for me, but I think probably what I see with students is a lot of texting happens, and we think that this makes good communication. So we think that texting and email, okay, we're communicating. Our group communication is fine. We sent texts, we sent emails. What I find is more often than not, texting is not a great way to communicate in a group project. We lose subtleties when we text. Sarcasm never goes over well in text because you can't read tone. So we lose a lot when we text. And we're not making personal relationships often when we text. So this is an old man's point of view. Young folks may feel differently. But I find that a lot of times when I have to do a postmortem on some group thing that did not go well, a lot of times when we start digging through it, texting as a communication style in an engineering group project turns out to be not great. So I would say if you're going to text, use it for clear, concise kinds of things. But in general, communication in the group face-to-face just works better. A few tips that I've come across in terms of engineering group work. So I'm going to pause, and then we'll do one more little activity here, and that'll be it for this class. Okay, so I want to wrap this lesson up with some stuff I found on the internet. So I found it on the internet. It must be true, right? If it's on the internet, it must be true. So, and this is just tips for working in groups that I found. I just want to kind of read and discuss it with you. And it's tough to have a two-way discussion here, but pause as I work through these and think about them, and maybe turn to the person you're watching this with and ask questions about them. So these are 9 things that the internet says make working in groups go well. First one: work hard. For all activities, do your share and a little bit more. Be responsible, and then add a little extra to bring the standards of the group up and make it success more likely. I think that's a good one. Do your part. That's probably the most important thing you can do. Beyond being a leader in your group and setting the agenda and some of those things is, do your share, work hard, and then do a little more than your share. If we all did that in terms of being Americans or being world citizens, probably the world would be a better place, right? Work hard. Be inclusive. Bring every member of the group in on discussions, decision-making, and activities. Give everyone a chance to speak, listen to them, and give serious consideration to what they're saying. Cooperate, right? So that's the idea of working together, right? Those are very good points. A lot of this big internet list is stuff that we've simply talked about and covered over the course of the last 20 minutes or so. Take turns. Don't be a leader all the time. Don't be a follower all the time. Don't talk too much. Listen sometimes. Don't just listen to others, though. Don't just be quiet all the time. Share some opinions. In other words, right? You can't just be one thing all the time in a group. Try on other roles, especially early on in your career, which you folks are. Try out all the hats. A lot of times in group work in our engineering classes, we talk about putting on a hat. So right now I'm the structural engineer, or maybe now I'm the thermo fluids engineer. Put on the leadership hat sometimes, put on the follower hat sometimes, the listener hat sometimes, and work your way through that project, taking turns with some of those roles. Not only is it good early in your career, it's just good practice working in groups. Be nice. Your mom would be real pleased there. Be nice. Avoid personal criticism. Make sure you understand what someone is saying before you weigh in with your opinion on it. Give them the benefit of the doubt. That's empathy and compassion too, isn't it? Be nice. A lot of things in a group don't have to be personal when we disagree. That's a big deal. Be nice. Be timely. Show up promptly for meetings. Meet all the deadlines. When you're late, you're wasting other people's time, and you make them mad. People depend on you. Get it done on time. That's a big deal. Just be on time the best you can. That's a great way to arrange your engineering career. Make those deadlines. If you're not going to make it, let people know early, I'm not going to make it. So being on time is a big deal. Don't be an enabler. Number 6 here, it says. If you've got somebody who isn't doing their work, hold them responsible as a group. Everyone needs to do their part. So I think I was an enabler when I discussed my group project there and just basically did all the work. Maybe that wasn't the right answer. In terms of, I was nervous. I wanted a good grade. I just did it. Sometimes that's not the best way. Don't be an enabler. Try and get that other person up to speed where you are, if you can. Stay focused on the task. Make your meetings count. Don't drift into irrelevant subjects. Be mindful about what you need to accomplish. It can be real easy to get distracted. Sometimes group stuff, we got to get it done, right? So improve the mood of the group. Be positive, be fun, be appreciative of other people, be full of good ideas. Do your part to make the environment a good one. So everything I've talked about today so far has essentially been, okay, do this, do this, do this, make sure the group got. Sometimes you got to have some fun. Sometimes the person who makes our meetings fun is contributing just as much as the person who has the best technical ideas, because at the end of the day, we're people, we're humans, and we do want to have some enjoyment out of life. So find those moments and enjoy what you're doing. Last one, don't cast blame unfairly. If there's a problem in the group, begin by asking what you have done or not done to contribute to the problem. That's the idea of taking care of our own business first, and what you might help to do to fix the problem. If there's a conflict, try to work it out through respectful talk with each other. And it says right in here, not email or texting, a horrible conflict medium. That comes down to that. Texting as communication doesn't always work that well. If there's if there's a problem in your group, this is the way to do it, right? Face to face, the best you can. Try to understand the other person's point of view as you discuss the issue. Again, that gets back to empathy. So these are just a few things about how to work in a group. I think some of my tips and some of those definitely overlap, but there's some good information in both. We wanted to do this group and leadership lesson fairly early on in the course because these are skills you're going to be using in this course, but also it's in this course, which is fairly early on in your engineering career, because these are skills you're going to be doing and using throughout your engineering career, throughout a lifetime. So just an introduction to some of these things. I know that in many engineering programs in the state of Texas, they'll have a course specifically in leadership skills. So look forward to that as well. I know that we do at UT Tyler in civil engineering, leadership, business practices, and asset management. There's a lot of leadership in that course. So just a few thoughts and ideas. I hope that you can put them into practice through the rest of your time in this course and the rest of your engineering career.